Welcome to the On Stage podcast, where we interview musicians and members of the entertainment community. Happy to have you on the platform. Everyone, this
Yeah.
is Lily Mott from Be the Change Media Network, and she's got her own podcast. She's originally from Evergreen, Colorado, United States, believe it or not. And she received a BA in journalism and politics as a Johnson Scholar at Washington, a Lee University in Lexington, Virginia. And then you, Lily, as a student journalist, reported for and produced a Rockbridge Report,
hmm
reported for the university's student-run newspaper, freelance for several print publications. And after all this, you can share with us a few things and why you found yourself in Cardiff, Wales, which is like
Yeah.
hours and hours in a different time zone. It's like, what's going on in your head there?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I always preface this with I blame COVID for a lot of this because I don't know what would have happened if that hadn't happened. But like you said, I went to Washington and Lee, which is a very small liberal arts school in Lexington, Virginia. It's like southwestern Virginia. And I always just kind of tell people I went to school in Virginia because most people don't know it. But when COVID happened, it was really tough to be there because it is a very rural area. It's home to Washington and Lee and also Virginia Military Institute. So that creates a really interesting dynamic in the town. And it's pretty much just college students. And so when COVID happened, we were pretty much just confined to be in our dorms and going to class, and that was it. And since it was such a small place, it felt like a bubble, and it kind of took all the fun out of what we were able to do before. And there wasn't many social things, and that's no fault of the school, but it just kind of got a little bit miserable because there was nothing to do but school, home. So I decided to go to the University of Oxford for my junior year, and I went for the whole year, which is a little bit uncommon because most students just go for a semester. But I spent the whole year there and I just loved it. I fell in love with rowing. I loved British culture. I just thought that it was such a great place to be. And so then I decided that I wanted to come back in some way. And Oxford doesn't do journalism. Oxford and Cambridge actually don't do any form of, they don't do kind of most new subjects. So I studied politics when I was there, but things that are kind of more emerging and developing, they don't do as much of that. So I decided to come to Cardiff because it has a really great journalism school, and my school is actually right next to the BBC, which is absolutely amazing. And it's just a really cool place to be. It's so fun to be in Wales, and I've learned a little bit of Welsh. I have lots of friends who are from here, so it's been a great adventure. But I'm not sure what's next. I'm kind of in the works of figuring out jobs, podcast, moving around, all that stuff. So yeah, I'm at a time of transition, but that's a little background on Wales, I guess, how we're here.
Yeah, that's interesting. And also, the TV program Torchwood is taken in Cardiff, Wales as well.
Yes. And Doctor Who.
Yeah.
That's their claim to fame.
Doctor
I keep
Who.
seeing all of the Doctor Who. Yeah. I keep seeing they keep doing like filming pop-ups like all over the city because a lot of it is filmed just in parts of the city, which is so cool. So you'll just see this giant like green screen wheeling down the road. It's so cool.
So are you a David Tennant or a Matt Smith fan?
Oh, I don't. Okay, so this is kind of controversial. I think Matt Smith. What do you think?
I'm a big David Tennant fan. I actually started
Okay,
watching
okay.
Doctor Who when Tom Baker was Doctor and Fourth Doctor. I never
Oh
did
yeah.
like nothing against her, but I didn't like Jodie Whittaker. Basically,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
it is
David Tennant
interesting though.
was so much better.
Yeah, it's so funny because just everyone here, there's two shows that most Welsh people I would say talk about, and it's Gavin and Stacey, if you know that one, on Netflix, and then it's also Doctor Who. Everyone just loves them, so you have to be a little bit well versed when you come here in both of them.
Yeah, how do you get used to the time difference because you have to eventually go visit family back home? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that is a little bit tricky because, like you said, I'm also from Colorado, so that's
Hmm.
7 hours, whereas like the East Coast is only 5. So for a lot of my friends, they're on the East Coast, but my family, it's that additional 2 hours, and that does get a little bit tricky. I think it's whenever I go to visit, I usually go back for Christmas. That's kind of my rule. I always tell my family I don't know other times, but I'll definitely be back for Christmas, which is good. But I think it is tricky. The trickiest part has actually been podcast interviews. And I so appreciate you doing it at this time because a lot of times my interviews have to be, and I know it's early for you, so early for you, but a lot of times my interviews have to be like 10, 11, maybe even 12 my time because of that like 5 hour difference and, just to the East Coast. And that's just so tricky when you have to record a podcast interview at, 11 or 11:30 at night. That's exhausting. But I think that's kind of the biggest challenge. So we'll see. Something that I'm probably going to have to keep dealing with because time zones just exist. But that's been the struggle this year.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Lily. I actually interview a lot from the UK. I know a few from
Mm-hmm.
Australia, and there's
Oh,
like three
yeah.
time
Yeah.
zones there. For me
Yeah.
in Toronto, they're either 12, 14, or 16 hours difference. That's not the most difficult part of it. The difficult parts of those when you're 6 hours ahead and you get on the platform and you're an hour early. So it's like, oh, there's 6 hours, not 5 hours. Darn, you know. But otherwise, I love it. It's been almost like this October will be 3 years.
Oh,
Uh,
that's so
yeah,
exciting.
and I actually opened the podcast, I think, during the pandemic, like everyone else.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
you have interviewed Kylie Montigny,
Yes, 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 yes.
who is my
Yes.
co-host, believe it or not.
That's so cool. I saw the episode. I saw one of the episodes. It was so fun. The one where you asked about the color of the band. I thought that
Yeah,
was so creative. I
I
thought
know
that was
Amanda from Bad Mary. She's actually, yeah, they're very wonderful, wonderful band, and very
yeah.
beautiful people. And Kylie does such a good job on her podcast. She's got three of them now.
I know, I know. She's just constantly
Fantastic.
producing content. It's so
Yeah.
it's so cool. And how
And
she managed to do it, like balancing things, is just crazy.
And someone as young as you too, like you're the director of Be the Change Media Network, and you founded to amplify the voices of young change makers. Actually, before we get into this, how did your early life experiences shape your aspirations and career choices?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up with both my parents are public school teachers in Colorado. And so my family has had like a long history in academia. My grandfather was a professor, and everyone in my family were kind of related to schools in some way. So I always tell people I really grew up in schools. Like whenever it was the weekend and my parents had to do work, me and my siblings would go into school. We would sit there with like juice boxes and cookies that my dad brought, and we would watch a movie on his like projector. And that was just kind of our casual weekend plans. And so I really came to appreciate the work that they did so much because they are just amazing workers. My parents are huge inspirations to me. I think often my parents do. My mom actually wakes up at 3 a.m. every morning to walk her dogs
Hmm.
before school. And so she works from about 3 a.m. and she tutors after school. So she'll start her day in school at 7 ish and
Wow.
then she'll work until around 6. And my dad is very similar, just working these really long hours. And it's a very thankless job being a teacher just because I think they get a lot of appreciation from our community. They're very kind of famous in our town. I'm very proud of that because a lot of people know them, and I always tell people if they were bad teachers, I wouldn't like it, but they're great teachers. So everyone loves them. But they get a lot of appreciation, but of course when it comes to the pay and the hours, it's just really, really grueling work often. And so I think I saw all of the work that they were doing and just the stories that I heard from people about how they really impacted people's lives. And I was just so inspired by that. And from a young age, I think I knew that teaching might not be the path for me just because I think I will be the first to say I don't know if I'm as empathetic as my mom and dad, especially my mom working with elementary school students. She's a saint, and I think they're just so patient. And I always thought I think my talents were better suited to journalism and being able to talk with people and share their stories. And I guess still empathy in a way, but I guess a little bit different, less kind of constant patience with people and more of interviewing people, kind of understanding where they're at, being able to share their stories.
Mhm.
And I was just so drawn to that. And so when I was younger, I got the opportunity to work with an organization called Peruvian Hearts, and I went to Cusco, Peru, and I actually got to film a documentary about a day in the life of a young woman who was attending university there. And it was really cool because in Cusco, there is a lot of poverty. And although it's the center and kind of the touristy capital of Peru, right outside the city center where there's the McDonald's and the KFC and stuff is just
Oh,
really, really like it's just hard, really serious poverty. And so I got to see the way that these young women were living, and I was like, this is it. I was filming this documentary and talking with these girls, and I just loved sharing their stories and meeting their families, and just being able to take myself kind of out of the equation and just really shine a spotlight on them and amplify their stories. So I loved it from there. And then later the podcast came about, but I think my parents were the ones that inspired me to do public service of some sort. And I went a little bit different way than education, but I do think in a way I still educate people just a little bit differently. So that's kind of a long way of saying education inspired most of it. My parents are awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
that sums it up.
because both your parents are like public school teachers, and because you're passionate about public service and education, that kind of changed your life and twisted you and put you in where you are. Was there ever thought that maybe there's something else you wanted to do? You wanted to go down a different path apart from podcasting, interviewing, having your own network? What was that like for you?
Yeah. I think I have often oscillated between politics and maybe being a politician and journalism, which are a little bit different, of course, as far as kind of their functions and the roles that they play in society. But I love politics. I think that it's so interesting. And I have that double major in journalism and politics. And my dad is actually a government teacher. So I think some of that is owed to him as well. I think it's really, really important for people to be engaged in politics and to understand the way that they affect their lives, especially as we see widespread apathy ahead of a huge election year across like all around the world. And so I think it's a really interesting role that journalists can play in politics. And I became more interested in that the more that I explored it. And I kind of slowly shifted my focus from, okay, maybe I don't want to be the politician. Maybe I want to be the person who is sharing their message and gets to kind of craft the way that the public understands politics and can relate to them. So I think it was just kind of a little bit of a mind shift, but definitely something that I want to be involved in politics in some way, but maybe just in a different role.
You must have some sort of female empowerment, some sort of kind of feeling of strength when I am the main person. I'm the one that's speaking to people. I'm the host of the podcast. And then you go out and find your guests. And did you ever think of a sort of niche that you wanted? Like you have a whole bunch of eclectic type of people that you interview on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. Uh, what would you consider this? Just would you consider it just amplifying the voices, young change makers, or just people that are your age? Like, who would you consider to
Yeah,
be?
I think that's interesting because I think you're right. I do have such a wide range of people, and I
Mhm.
think that's been the most interesting part of the podcast because I think whenever I think about the topics that I've been able to discuss with people, I mean, it's everything from climate change, gun violence, local political controversies, like local political elections, to, wide sweeping human rights issues. And so I think it's been so interesting for me to be able to learn about all of those topics, but also for a lot of my kind of avid listeners to be able to get a wide range of topics. And I think what makes it more interesting is that I always tell people not every episode of the podcast is going to be for everyone. I'm like the first person to say that because I think since the topics are so broad, there's something in there for everyone, no matter what you're interested in, but every episode might not be for you. And so I think that's been kind of the way that I've been cultivating my audience, or I guess my listener base and the people that I choose for the podcast. I think the focus of the podcast has always for me been the founders or activists, advocates. I like to find people on Instagram and LinkedIn, and mostly Instagram and LinkedIn, because often I can kind of see the way that they're vocal about the work that they're doing. And that's kind of a big criteria for me, is that I think you have to be open about the work that you're doing and you have to be sharing it and you have to be kind of proud of it. And I always find people through that. So I think that makes my guest base very, very interesting because these people are very passionate about the work that they're doing. So yeah, I would say just people who are really committed. And I guess the term change maker is very loose as well. So that leads to a lot of kind of creative, it leads me to kind of interpret it the way that I want, if that makes sense. So that's an interesting question though. I haven't really thought about it that much, but yeah. I think I just kind of do what feels right, if that makes sense.
How much research go into your guests so that I'm sitting down, I'm introducing them, and then you go on? Like, how do you find that information? Do you internet? Do you read their books? Do you listen to their music? Whoever you have on.
Yeah, I think I when I first started the podcast, I was doing a lot more research into my guests. I think that I was a lot more nervous when I was interviewing people, and I think that I would go on social media and I would look through their Instagram, their LinkedIn, maybe their Twitter. Um, at the time, TikTok. I think that I would do a lot more stalking of people. And at this point now, it's almost 4 years since I started it, and I've done over 200 episodes. And then I also have a radio show. So adding in those, I'm probably close to 250 with the Instagram lives as well. So I think the amount of conversations that I've been able to have with people have made me a lot more comfortable with interviewing just in general. But also, I've come to realize that I think the best conversations that I've had are the ones that are the most authentic, where I know a little bit about their background so that then I can ask informed questions about the work that they're doing. But I don't know so much that I leave things out for the listeners, if that makes sense. I kind of like my first question for all my guests is, can you introduce yourself briefly? And I think that's really good because I don't really like when I am introducing them and kind of putting them into a box when often these young people have so many different roles that they're playing and they have so many things that they're passionate about. So if I introduce them, I feel like I'm always missing something, and often that gets lost then in the conversation because my episodes are only 15 to 20 minutes. And so I really want to see the way that they introduce themselves so I can figure out what they want to talk about, what they're interested in, and that might not be what I was planning on talking about. So I think I always just go into it now more organically, just saying, who are you? What are we going to talk about? And they kind of lead the way with the interviews, which I think I really appreciate because it's a much more authentic conversation for me. And I get to learn more that way. So, yeah.
I agree with you, Lily. And also, they have a lot of life experiences. And how do you deal with all that? One of your guests might open up to you and you're totally taken aback and say, how do I deal with this?
I think that that's a tricky question because I think I am always prepared for people to share stories, especially when I ask about why did you get started in this work. And often people do have a very personal, emotional moment or kind of a life changing memory that they share. And that can often be really, really deep and, very sensitive as well, often. And I think that it's just tricky for me to I think I'll be the first to say I never try to put myself in their shoes because often my guests are from entirely different parts of the world. They're from entirely different backgrounds than mine. They have had experiences that I can't really even imagine. So when I'm sitting there and listening, I think it's so important to be an active listener. That's the one thing that I really try to do. And I think I've gotten so much better with that. But I also think Zoom calls and going through COVID really helped me do that. But I think it's so important when you're talking with someone to show that you're understanding them and you're listening. And so I think when I'm interviewing, that's the first thing. I'm so aware of the way that my face looks and maybe what I'm saying, or the sounds that I'm making, because I do think that is so important for a good conversation is to show somebody that you appreciate them and you're so glad that they're sharing this with you. So, especially with young people, I think if you're not getting the feedback back from the other person, you're going to stop talking. You don't want them to do that. You want them to continue. So, I think that's what I first always think about. And I always thank people for sharing, of course, after the fact, but before the interview, I'm also so open with people that if they want to share something with me that's very personal, like let's do it. Let's go as deep as they want. But I also am doing a podcast, not necessarily a radio show. And so if after the fact we do something or we have a conversation and there's something in there that they think is too personal, or there's something in there that they think is going to hurt someone else, or they don't want their family to be included in it. I've had a couple of conversations where after the fact, they're like, hey, when you publish this, can you actually just take out that second answer? And I think that does create a more welcoming atmosphere for the person, and it makes them more open to sharing those things because they know that it doesn't have to be in there. And if I can make them feel more comfortable that way, it's okay, you know? And of course, I would like to include it because it's part of their story, but I think you always have to give people that option. So I think hopefully that, you know, makes people feel more comfortable. But those are just kind of my thoughts throughout my experience so far. But definitely have to get better at it. You know, there's always room for improvement, but those are kind of my ground rules, I guess.
It's a great answer. And we appreciate you, Lily. We appreciate you opening up to us.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I noticed that a lot of podcasts, they're like more deeper podcasts when you're not recording. I've gotten a lot more out of guests, and there's no
Mhm,
recording. The
mhm.
world doesn't know. And then they start opening up, and you're like, whoa, it's too bad
Yeah,
the world
yeah.
doesn't know this, but they prefer to share it with you because they feel comfortable with you.
Yeah, and that's actually something too I've found with I've done a bunch of different forms of journalism, I guess, and the reason that I love podcasting and audio work so much is that I think people actually are, as far as kind of the scale of being open to conversations, I think they're most open when they're talking on a microphone or when they're talking in a setting like this because they're less aware when there's a camera, or they're less aware than if there's a camera in their face, you know, or if
Mhm.
there's, you know, kind of I think this is just, it feels more like a conversation. We're just more open and natural, especially if we can do it in person. I love in person interviews, but I love the audio work because I just think it makes people a little bit more comfortable. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I prefer, I mean, video, of course, I prefer this, but when I do get a chance to do in-person interviews, it's with somebody that I know.
Hmm.
But I love just,
Yeah, that's
it's like
amazing.
you feel humbled when you find out that the problems you have are minuscule when you hear what they've gone through and you say to yourself,
Mhm.
everything's good, everything's right. I really, really appreciate everything you're doing for people. And I really love it how you're talking and I just the Instagram, you're there and you're smiling and you're on fire. It's great. Is this something that you want to pursue as a full-time career as an interviewer, interviewing people
Yeah,
going around the world?
yeah, that is something that I would really love to do. I think it's a little bit tricky to make it a career where I'm at right now. Just definitely something that I've been kind of navigating. I think ultimately I would love to do something like this. I think when people ask me what's like my end goal or my
Mhm.
ultimate career, I think it would be something like Christiane Amanpour, where she gets to be in the room with these amazing people and she gets to ask them amazing questions. And I just think that is ultimately something I would love to do. But I think that there's a long time until I get to that point. But I think the more experiences that I've had with interviewing people and just feeling more comfortable with kind of having conversations, meeting people, I think that this podcast has just been huge for just shaping not only like the journalist I am, but also the person that I am. And so I think I definitely see myself continuing with the media network and the podcast and everything for a while because I love doing it, you know, and I think like you said, the Instagram lives and stuff, it's just it just fills me with so much joy to do the interviews and to talk with all these people. So I think it's just such a positive part of my life. And it's so funny because my parents always tease me. They're like, it's so great that you love doing this and you're producing all of this stuff. And they're like, but when are you going to make money off of it? I'm like, you know, so that's kind of the tricky part right now. But
Yeah.
ultimately, yeah, I would love to do it professionally. So we'll see. Got to figure out a way to get there. But yeah.
It's good to have your parents with you. We're proud of you, Lily. So I'm really interested in knowing what it was, what emotional feeling or what's going through you when, like, go back in high school.
Mhm.
You traveled to Peru to film a documentary about a day in the life of a young woman attending university in Cusco. How did you
Mhm.
manage that? And what was going through your mind thinking, how is this? Like, how are you doing this? What was your mental health like during that time?
Yeah, yeah. So I always owe this experience to I have a mentor named Holly, and shout out to Holly. I'll send this episode to her after. She was so helpful for me when I was in high school because I am from a pretty small town in Colorado, and we're about 45 minutes outside of Denver and then 45 minutes from Boulder. So they kind of make a triangle.
Nice.
Yeah, beautiful place to be. But it was a little bit isolated as far as opportunities
Hmm.
for young people sometimes. And my high school was great. It was a great school. Like we were highly ranked and everything. But as far as opportunities outside of school, there was kind of the classic sports and clubs. And I was student body president and I was president of a couple clubs and I did sports and stuff. But I kind of realized that I wanted to do more that was outside of school. Of course, there was kind of the opportunity to be involved with things affiliated with the school, but I started to recognize that there were clubs like Rotary and the Lions Club and things where I could get involved with bigger projects that weren't only just involved with the school, but would really impact my greater community and then maybe the country and internationally. So I think she kind of expanded my worldview a little bit to saying, it's great that you're doing this, community service project for Evergreen, but get connected with this organization. They're doing amazing work for young women in Peru. And then the Rotary Club, she was part of the Rotary Club, and I was an intern for the Rotary Club. It's kind of like a formal title for what I was doing, but I wasn't really an intern for them. It was just kind of an excuse for them to support me. I did a fundraiser to raise $10,000 and I bought laptops for the girls in this program. And so we took the laptops over on this trip. And while we were there, I was there for 2.5 weeks. And
Mm.
I just followed this one scholar around named Aldani. And she is actually going to the US for her first time in November, which is extremely exciting. It's so cool to kind of follow along with her because I got to follow her along for a couple weeks and just film her just kind of doing her daily life. And it was so interesting because that was the first time that I was really interviewing people. I didn't speak Spanish. I took French. So that was definitely an experience. But I, picked up a little bit of Spanish. I got to kind of do the touristy things as well, which was really fun. That was the first time that I had been out of the country. So yeah, it was just an amazing experience in expanding my own worldview and just realizing that there's so much more out there than just kind of my community and my state. Then, ultimately I went to a different state. I went across the country for college and then I moved across the world. So I think that kind of spurred my interest in moving and seeing more things. But it was such a great experience. And I think I owe my passion for journalism and storytelling to all of that for sure.
Did you do research on Peru and find out the culture shock and the food and everything that they like before you got there? You don't want to be there.
Yes.
Just said hello. I didn't know that was a bad word, you know?
Yeah. For sure. I did a good amount and it was so nice that I worked with this organization, which I always tell people to if you're going to do something like that, like don't do it on your own. You should definitely try to find, people on the ground, organizations to work with because they were so helpful with kind of prepping me for the clothes that I would need. It was winter there when I went, so it was summer in Colorado, but winter there, so it was freezing. I mean, it's like the mountains for the most part. So kind of just prepping me with everything that I would need and helping to translate and everything, which was huge. So yeah, I definitely did my research.
Besides Holly, of course, were there any other
Mhm.
influential people or mentors who guided you during the early stages of your journey?
That's interesting. I think my university professors, a bunch of my journalism professors, were so helpful with just kind of being there. I'm definitely like a word vomiter when I need to make decisions. And so I think that so many people who are close to me have been so helpful with just being there to listen. And I think that my university professors were so helpful with that. Just, I would like go into some of their rooms sometimes and just be like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And I've got this in the works and I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about moving to the UK and blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
And they would just kind of be there to like listen. And so I think some of those people they've just been so influential for me to not even really offer advice but to just be there as like a sounding board for me to explain everything to and then realize kind of how ridiculous I sound sometimes. That's just as useful. So yeah.
I like how you say word vomiter. It's like
Yeah.
you're meeting someone first time, you go, hello, I got
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah.
Were there any challenges or setbacks that in hindsight played a crucial role in your personal development?
I think at first COVID was definitely a setback because I had been a little bit hesitant to go to my undergraduate university
Right.
because it I think part of the reason that I wanted to go was that it's a pretty conservative university in the US. And I come from a very liberal town in Colorado and from a pretty liberal background. Just both my parents are teachers and my whole family's involved in academia. So often they lean more to the left. I was a little bit nervous to go to the south of the US, and especially I moved there in 2019, so right before the 2020 election. And so Trump was still president. And it was just a really interesting time to be in American politics. And so I think that when COVID hit, then I had really enjoyed it the first year. But then, of course, when COVID hit, I think everyone just became a little bit more skeptical as to like why we were there because my university brought all of us back when most universities weren't open that year or like didn't have students back. And so that was a little bit of a challenge just as far as kind of mental health and trying to figure out what was next for me. And I was still running the podcast because I had interned in DC during COVID, and that was amazing because I got to live in this city and I got to meet some really cool people. And that was kind of despite COVID. But then when I went back to school, I was kind of in this small rural southern town, and I was doing this podcast with these people who were all over the world, and I was so inspired by them. But I was in all of these classes that were really interesting as well, but kind of just stuck in this little town. And I didn't have a car either. So it was kind of like just really stuck. So that's kind of what inspired me to take that leap and be like, I'm moving to England next year. I'm just going to do it. So I think that was kind of how I dealt with that. But I would say, as far as kind of challenges, I think that was the year that I started to reevaluate, okay, what do I want to do? Where am I? And I think it was good because I think I made something of it and I got to have this amazing experience in England and make the podcast more international. But that definitely was a time where I was like, goodness, what am I doing? So yeah, I think that was definitely a challenge, but good things came of it. So it's all good.
Yeah, you're very, like I said before, you're very passionate and you love what you're doing. So why give it up? Like
Yeah.
besides podcasting and interviewing, you must have other activities or hobbies that bring you the most joy and fulfillment outside everything else.
Yeah, definitely. I love so it's kind of attached to podcasts, but I am like the biggest proponent of a podcast walk. I love to like binge listen to podcasts and just go for like hours of walking around a city. That's my favorite thing to do. I think I try to do it as much as I can. It's my favorite weekend activity. But I'm also a really big runner, so that's also a good opportunity to listen to podcasts. I'm training for the Stockholm Marathon in June. So I've been running lots. I
Wow.
really enjoy doing. Yeah, it's taking a lot more time than I realized it would, but now I'm kind of committed to it at this point. So it's been really fun. And I just love, I'm a huge coffee drinker. So I think exploring coffee shops, I love to read, just lots of things that kind of keep me grounded when I have really busy days and things. It's so nice to just kind of get away and for an hour, just sit in a coffee shop with a book and enjoy my time. And I am definitely a big kind of movie buff, TV shows. I love to watch everything that people recommend to me. So I definitely find ways to break up all the work that I'm doing every day and to make it a little bit less heavy sometimes. So yeah, I think I'm working more on the kind of being more well rounded and everything, but I think that I always know when I need a break, which I think is a good thing. Um, I think that my body's pretty good at being like, okay, nope, let's sleep, let's slow down, let's watch some TV. So it's just listening to that and leaning into it.
What are you currently reading? Like Harlequin romance novel or
Ooh.
something that teaches you something?
No, I'm really, really big into like murder mysteries. So
Oh,
if you know, like The Silent Patient by like Alex Michaelides, like I'm a big fan of kind of like twisted, dark, scary murder stories. So I have it right here.
The Fury by Alex Michaelides?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's so good. He is like a New York Times bestseller. Like he's a great author. This one is a little bit different from some of his other works because he always does stuff that's based in the UK, which for me I love because it's where I'm at. It's always dark and rainy and stuff. But this one's based on a small island in Greece. So definitely recommend. It's great. But yeah, if you ever need like murder mystery twisted stories, I've got them all. I've read them all.
You see that, everyone? And if you want to pick it up, we'll link that Amazon link down below so you can buy it
Yes,
and read
yes.
along with Lily. New
Yeah.
podcast. Read along with Lily Mott.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like CSI Miami. I liked all those. Criminal
Yeah.
Minds. Not really. It's
Hmm.
kind of twisted, but I do like the drama type shows, and I like science
Hmm.
fiction and everything that teaches you something.
Yeah.
But Harlequin romance, no, it doesn't teach you anything. It's nice to read it. I like the Hallmark movies
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Are you into Hallmark as well?
Yes, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely when Christmas time comes around, that's that's perfect for sure.
Who would be your dream guest? Who would you like to interview?
I think I go between Malala and Greta Thunberg because I think as far as just like the purpose of my podcast, I think those two are so they're just the classic examples of young change makers who are making change and just doing everything that I think whenever people talk about their role models, it's like often them. And so I think that would just be amazing. But I think also I have a couple of maybe more attainable ones that I'm just kind of like chipping away at slowly, just sending them like DMs and emails and stuff. I would love to have Sophia Kiani. She's the youngest UN advisor, and she also is the founder of Climate Cardinals, which is really cool. She's a student at Stanford as well, so she's juggling so many things. There's a couple people just on my list, and I'm actually going through and figuring out some podcast booking this afternoon. So fingers crossed. Maybe I'll get some yeses. Yeah, I would love to have Malala. I think ultimately she would be my top because I remember when I was young, I read her book and that was just so inspiring. And I think just the work that she's doing and the work that she's done in the past is just amazing. So kind of a classic, maybe cliche answer, but yeah.
Yeah, my dream guest, as you know, I
I was going to say,
actually,
who's yours?
yeah, I like interviewing musicians, celebrities. My dream musician guest would be Sting from the Police.
Ooh, okay, okay.
I meant like our
Uh-huh.
dream guest. Once you get that, you'll know you're at the peak of mountain, and all you have to do is fly and soar like an eagle. You know what I mean? Definitely. But I love interviewing
That's
everyone, and
so
I love to
cool.
learn from them. I like to, share some things, and whatever they share with me, I like to bring into another guest. Like,
Yeah. I love that. I think the learning is the best part of these conversations is just what you can take away from someone else's life experience is just amazing. And I definitely wouldn't have had all of the experiences that I've had to talk with people without the podcast. I think that's and I also love I think a lot of podcasters have that same idea where they're like this is just a cool excuse for me to meet cool people. So, I think that's what I take it as where I'm like, yeah, I just get to meet these awesome people and stay connected with them and learn about the cool work they're doing. At the end of the day, it's that simple.
yeah, I can give you some more names of podcasts. One is Jordan Harbinger. You should watch him on YouTube.
Mm.
Another one is Stephen Bartlett. He's one of the
Oh, okay, okay.
he does the British version of Dragon's Den. So that Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a
Oh,
CEO. That's
okay.
the name of
Mhm.
his YouTube channel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know that one, Diary of a CEO, for sure.
And for
Yeah.
musician podcasts, apart from my own, of course, would Rick Beato would be Rick Roll.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
So some really good ones there,
I'll
and
write these
also
down.
Kylie has some pretty good ones too, as well.
Yeah, Kylie has a wide range of people that she's featured. Like, whenever I scroll through, I'm just like, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah, that was.
It's crazy.
I like Kylie, so that was one of your best episodes.
Uh-huh. For sure. Yeah, I love talking with Kylie. I think that so now I've had her on twice on the podcast, and she's just great. I love the work that she's doing. I think I just don't know how she manages to do it all in a day, but
I know she's
that's
got,
beyond me.
yeah, she's got two, three podcasts right now. She's got a woman empowerment company. She's just, I don't know how she deals with her mental health, but she does. So I was asking her the other day about bucket list. Do you have a bucket
Mhm.
list? And what do you have on it? Do you mind
I
sharing with
actually
us?
don't. I don't really have a bucket list. I know that that's interesting. I have places, I think for me, it's more about travel. Like, I have places that I would like to see, not necessarily like things that I would like to do as much, but I love to travel. So I have a couple things planned that I'm excited about, but I got to travel a lot 2 years ago when I was studying abroad because we had these huge breaks at Oxford. They do these breaks in between the terms. You go for 8 weeks and you have 6 weeks off, and then you go for 8 weeks and 6 weeks off. So it's so nice because you get tons of time. So I did kind of all of like Western Europe, and I got to see a bunch of stuff, but I have yet to see Amsterdam, and I have yet to see.
I was there
Really? Oh,
because
you
I'm
have to
half
give me
Dutch, so I went there with
recommendations.
my father, my
Uh huh.
mother. We went to
Oh my
Belgium. We
gosh,
went to Paris, France. A really nice.
that's
Really, I
amazing.
want to go back.
Yeah, I really, because Amsterdam, I've just heard so many good things about it, and I feel like you can't do like a European trip and not have Amsterdam. So I'm bummed that I haven't been yet, but that's on my list. And I also really want to see Prague as well. I haven't really done as much Eastern Europe,
Prague.
so yeah, so that's kind of on my upcoming list. But do you have any bucket list items?
Besides having Sting and on my podcast, I'd like to go back to Holland. My father was born in
Uh-huh.
Curacao, which is an island off the
Oh,
Caribbean, and my sister actually went to Curacao just a few weeks ago. I want to go back to commemorate his memorial because he's been gone for quite a while, over 20 years. And also, I want to do more in-person interviews. I want to have a studio and bring
yeah,
them to me. I'm not going to do anything. You bring the guests to me. I'm not letting and have a whole
yeah,
bunch of people around like admins to help me do things which I
yeah.
basically sometimes do on my own, like the graphic design
Mm.
stuff. Like I have a lot of stuff on my bucket list, and climbing a mountain is not one of you. Notice that most people have climbing Mount Everest on their bucket
That's
list.
crazy. I would not
Well,
want to do that. Yeah, no, 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 no. Growing up in Colorado, I've done enough mountain climbing, I think. We used to do that for like our hobbies. Like we would do that on the weekends and stuff. We would just climb like 14,000 feet. And I think I'm good. I think I'm good with that. That time has passed.
where do you see Be the Change Media Network next year?
I think that it's going to continue in a similar format with the podcast coming out every week. I think that I've really enjoyed doing the Instagram lives that I've been doing a lot because they take a lot less work than the podcast does, which is, I think, they also result in less like polished product, which that's kind of the drawback. But I really love just having the conversations where we both just get on, me, and the guests just can get on this live stream, and it doesn't take that much preparation, and it feels more like a casual conversation than meeting people for the first time and doing a more serious interview. So I really enjoy doing those. I definitely see the podcast and checking in with changemakers, the live streams continuing. I am really hoping to continue to do a radio show in some form. And right now, my radio show is through Cardiff University, and I'm going to be graduating soon from there. So I won't be able to do express radio anymore through Cardiff. So I would really like to take it to like a community radio station and continue featuring guests in person on the radio. But we'll see how that works because I'm not too sure how open they'll be to that type of idea. I think it's really cool, especially community radio is always looking for volunteers, especially in the UK. There's not that much of it, but I would love to keep doing that if I can, if I can find someone who's willing to put me on air, but we'll see. And then I also would really like to develop partnerships through Be the Change. So I think what I haven't really done the best idea or the best job of so far is engaging organizations and like nonprofits and some of the organizations that young people have founded. I think that I can do a better job of partnering with them and really amplifying the work that they're doing with young people, because I think I'm really interested in doing kind of like these series. I guess that's kind of my next phase of this is I would really like to partner with an organization and do a series highlighting like 5 to 7 change makers in their organization and talking about what they do and how they got involved with this. So it's kind of a long-term goal, but I think that that could be really cool because there are so many organizations around the world that are really focused on youth empowerment and bringing young people to this, to giving them a seat at the table. And so I think that would be great. But I have like lots of ideas for it. Now it's just kind of putting it in practice. So we'll see. We'll see. But now you're along for this ride too. So yeah, we'll see.
So Lily, I take it that you're staying in Cardiff. You're not going back home.
I think that I'm going to move to London actually next.
Okay.
So, of course, kind of job allowing and everything, we'll see. But tricky time to be in the journalism job market. So, we'll see what happens with everything. But I would really love to have a job that allows me to be flexible as far as working hours and maybe locations and continuing to do all of this work that I've been doing with Be the Change on the side because I do really want to also be a journalist and I love to actually do that work as well. So I think that's kind of the perfect life for me where I'm doing some form of journalism as a day job and then I also get to do all of this as well and continue to develop Be the Change. So yeah, we'll see, but maybe in London, fingers crossed.
Be the change. Okay, Lily. Be the change. Are you the change? Have you changed?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I am trying to do a little bit more every day. I think that I'm definitely living very day to day. And I think that's kind of the way that I always want to live my life, where it's every day for me is different as far as interviews that I have, as far as classes that I have, as far as work that I need to do. And I really love that. And so I think some days I definitely feel like I'm being the change more than other days. Like yesterday, I think I was being the change. I published a podcast episode, I had a radio show, I did pretty much all of the things yesterday. And today, I think I'm being changed by talking with you and we're sharing our stories. And I think that's amazing. But tomorrow, I'm going to spend the day cooped up in the library working on an academic paper. And maybe that day I'm not being the change as much. But I guess that also depends on kind of your definition. But for my definition, I think the work that I'm doing with the podcast and amplifying people's stories, hopefully that's being some change. Do you think you're being the change?
I think I'm getting more impacted by people changing me than me changing others. But I love it when people comment and say they've had a great interview. Nobody's ever given them the best interview before. They always get an interview and someone says, "So tell me what you do, how long you've been in it." But you literally get right deep down, and I'm like, I feel a sense of completion and pride. But then I go, "Thank you very much, very humble and everything." It keeps me going.
Mm-hmm.
Like if someone came up to you and
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
I hate what you're doing, Lily. You should don't give up your day job." What would your reaction be? That's negativity right there.
That's interesting. I think that oh, I don't know. I think that's also kind of I'm a little bit defensive as a person. I think most people who are close to me would say that being stubborn is probably my worst trait. So I don't know how I would take that if somebody came up and told me that straight to my face. I haven't had it yet, but I think that I am very proud of the community that I built at this point because I think to some extent Be the Change Media Network is not just mine. I think that it's everybody else's and that's kind of proven through the outcomes of some of the episodes. So, for example, I had one of my guests, Phoebe Hansen, reached out to me last week, and she said that through one of the panels that I spoke on talking about Be the Change, a BBC reporter who was in the audience went through all of my like podcast episodes, found her episode, found her story, and now she's going to be featured on a BBC limited series talking with a Nobel Peace Prize winner
Wow.
about how we can use AI to solve
Yeah.
climate change. And so that right there is proof that, maybe people don't really like the episodes or they don't like the podcast, but somebody does. there's some good coming out of it. And I think for me, it's just that idea of I've cultivated this community and there's so many connections that I think are being formed through that. So I think the work kind of speaks for itself a little bit. And it's not, mine. I'm just kind of the conduit through which these stories can be told. And I'm just the person who's kind of publishing them and facilitating the platform. So I think of it as a community of hundreds of people rather than my work, I guess.
Are you desiring to be like some sort of media mogul or just be able to be at
I
your desk with your feet up, say, okay, next?
yeah, like you said, bring the guests to me. I think it would be nice if I, like you said as well, I think it would be nice if I had people who would help me with this. I think that's like the ultimate goal where I'm not necessarily doing absolutely everything. I think it would be nice to have somebody who maybe does some of the editing for me, or helps me book some guests. I think that my ultimate goal would be for the idea of this podcast to be picked up by maybe someone who can do it more professionally or
Mhm.
do it on a bigger stage,
Oh, yeah.
because that might not necessarily be me, but I think the idea of the podcast is just so important, and it's something that I would just really hope lives on beyond, my work. So I think that's ultimately what I would like for sure.
You're very inspirational, Lily. I wish I had that sort of spunk
Thank
and
you.
vigor and fire and passion when I was
Thank
your
you.
age. When I was your age, I was sitting watching like old TV shows. I didn't even have a life but at least
I
look, you're
think
so
you're
young.
inspiring.
Oh, thank you
I
very
think you're
much.
inspiring with the work that you're doing. Of course, of course. There's
See,
that humbleness.
that's the reason I like doing it because people like you say some really good positive comments.
Hmm.
So I think we're both doing well here, Lily. I think.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
and
I agree.
and with your positive influence you have positively impacting the lives of others, people are going to go, I am this way because of Lily Mott. Who's Lily Mott? Oh, just go to lilymott.com. Who doesn't want a website at just lilymott.com? That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That has, it's like all of my like articles and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it's horrible because I need to keep it up better, because I always do this thing where I'll leave it for a couple months and then I have to do this giant like dump of everything into it, which is horrible. So thank you for reminding me. I should also do that. I should add that to my to-do list.
You're very welcome, Lily. How do you
Thank you.
align your daily actions with the long-term legacy you hope to leave behind? Like you want to leave something. You want to live your life so that people remember, yeah, Lily Mott, wow, be the change. I've changed because of her.
That is a good question. I think that I am very, I really, really try. I think I'm going to go back to the kind of day by day thing, because I think I am a big believer that if you do good things and if you kind of put good energy out, then it'll come back to you. And so I just think that every day I try to just do the most that I can while also kind of taking care of myself, being a good friend, being a good family member. And I think that that gets a little bit more difficult based on like my choice of where I live and the things that I do, because I have, especially this year, I think that I've been really focusing on cultivating like relationships and better relationships with people, especially if I can't be in the same country as them, or I won't be able to see them for a while. Like all of my college friends, I went from living in the same house with them to now having a 5 hour time change and being able to talk with them like once a month because of our schedules. And so I think while I'm doing all of this stuff to create so much content and, I'm putting all of this out into the world, I think just as important for me is making sure that I have people who I love and showing them that I love them and showing them that there's time for them. And so that's been something that I think my legacy, I hope, is also to be loved by people that I love. So I think that's something that I'm continuing to work on as well, because everything has to be in balance. So I think I have a tendency to get kind of caught up in my academic work and my be the change work and my professional work, and sometimes I neglect some of the people who matter the most to me. So that's kind of a day-to-day thing, but that's something that I try to do every day, is put out good energy and show people that I love them, but something I can keep working on for sure.
Wow, Lily, you're so inspirational. You're so passionate. Just an
Thank
aura
you.
around my laptop. It's like, whoa, Lily aura. Oh. In fact, I'm christening
Thank
this
you.
laptop Lily. So my laptop's now named
Thank
Lily.
you.
Okay, got
What
it.
an
I hope
honor.
Lily
Thank
survives for a little while.
you.
This laptop Lily might not last another year, but I'll just buy
Oh
another
no.
Lily.
Oh no. What an honor. Thank you so much.
Lily, really appreciate you. Love. I'm so honored and humbled to have the opportunity to have the host of Be the Change Media Network. Love all you do. Love your podcast. Uh, Before we go, I would like you to tell the audience, with people, upcoming Lily Mods, what is the one thing you can tell them and share with them so that they can take away with them?
That's a good one. My guiding motivation in life, and I used to wear it on a necklace, but I think I might get it tattooed soon. We'll see. But it's to whom much is given, much is expected, and it's noblesse oblige in Latin. And that is such an important guiding influence for me. And it's the advice that I always give people, because I think all of us have been given something in life. Some of us have been given much more than others. And I think I'm someone who's been given much more. So you need to take what you've been given in order to give back to those around you and to give back to the people who made you who you are. And that for me is so important. And I think there have been so many people who have really supported me to be where I am and will continue to support me. And I need to take what they've given me and make it something even better. So I think that's really my guiding influence. And yeah, if anybody needs some motivation today, too much is given, much is expected. And I think if we all live by that, the world would be an absolutely amazing place. So
Oh,
yeah, that's what I'll leave
that's
you with.
I love that. Wow.
Thank
Wow.
you. Thank you. Some
Amazing.
wisdom from my dad. My dad is brilliant, brilliant man.
Yes, so Lily Mott's wisdom from her father, take it from both of
Yes.
them. So we will have everything linked down below where they can find you. Is there any other place besides LinkedIn and Instagram where they can see all your podcasts?
That's about it, I think. That's kind of the best places to contact me. You can link my email if anyone really wants to reach me, lily at bethechangepodcast.org if anyone wants to shoot me an email. But yeah, Instagram and LinkedIn are definitely the best places to reach me for sure.
Send me all that information. We can link it down below in
I
case
will.
people want
I
to
will.
invite you onto their podcast. And you
For sure.
better, because she's amazing. All right,
Thank
Lily,
you so
just stay right there on the platform. Okay, everyone, we're going to end and thank you very much. All the way from Cardiff, Wales, Lily Mott from Be the Change Media Network. Thank you for tuning in. See you, Lily.
Awesome. Thank you so much.